soldier, man at arms, get down. Scars on my hands and arms, hit town.
3-year-old remembers his murder and identifies his killer. I'm on a webpage called realgoodnews.com, one word. On October 25, 2014, a Reincarnation story was posted about a 3-year-old. The article reads, "In these very strange times, many of us have long said that the veil is lifting and that consciousness and spiritual awakening is rising. The results are that many people are coming out of the anesthetic that man has long been under. Memories are returning, and the true nature of man as an immortal spiritual being is beginning to really be understood in a much deeper and more profound way." In his book, Children Who Have Lived Before, Reincarnation Today, German scientist Trutz Hardow recounts the story of his doctor friend Eli Lash's experience in witnessing the events of a young boy who had previously been murdered and then identified his killer. As Hardow describes in his book, the events took place in the Druze nation, which is in the Middle East around Lebanon, Syria, and the Golan Heights area. Within the tribe there was an understanding that we live more than one life in a physical body, and that we sometimes bring with us memories of past traumatic events. The Druze understood that these memories could cause physical, mental, and emotional symptoms and upset for the individual. Therefore, the traditions were to engage the child in conversation about whatever they could remember in an effort to relieve the symptoms and free the child from the past. Hardow states in his book, as soon as the child is born, its body is searched for birthmarks, since they are convinced they stem from death wounds which were received in a past life. The Druze knew that children had a hard time distinguishing between past and present when they just started speaking. So they would begin to question at that age, but get much more specific about the events at about the age of 3, when the child begins to understand the difference between past and present. At that time, if the child has talked about a place where he has lived a past life, the Druze take the child there. It is regarded as a special occasion, and a kind of native board of inquiry is formed, led by the village elders. One specific child that was born with a large birthmark on his head recounted that he had been murdered. A group of 15 men was formed, including village elders, representatives from neighboring villages, and Dr. Eli Lash, the only non-Druze in the group. The group was convinced, based on the child's statements, that he had lived in the surrounding area, so they began their journey going to the nearest village. They asked the boy if he had lived there, and he said he had lived in another village. So they continued on. In the second village, the boy again said no. So they continued on again. When they got to the third village, the child said he had lived there and suddenly began to recall names and events. He told them that months ago he had been murdered with an axe and was able to recall his own name. An elder from the village who had joined the group said he remembered that man, and that man had disappeared without a trace 4 years prior. They walked through the village and the boy identified the house he used to live in, and then suddenly, upon seeing his killer in town, walked right up to him, called him by name and said, "I used to be your neighbor. We had a fight and you killed me with an axe." Eli recounted how the man went white as a sheet, and then the boy said he knew where his body had been buried. Busted. Hardow states, quote, "How could he have known where his former neighbor had buried the body after his death? Almost daily my clients describe the following post-mortem scenario after death. The soul leaves the earthly body, and in most cases is able to see the body from above. Often it hovers there for a while, and can see exactly what happens to the body," unquote. The boy then leads the elders to the buried body and the axe that was used to kill him. When all was revealed, everyone stood staring at the murderer, who finally confessed to the crime in front of everyone. Eli asked what would happen to the murderer, and the villagers told him that it would be determined later what would be appropriate punishment for the crime, but refused to turn the man over to police, deciding to handle this issue themselves. These types of stories are becoming more and more common as consciousness is rising and people are learning about their actual spiritual nature and the fact that they are immortal beings having a physical human experience. This is not the first time I have heard such a story. I once heard a man tell his own story of remembering that his wife had killed him in a past life. He actually went and found her, aged, but still living in the same place. He told her who he was and that he forgave her. I have known other stories as well, and understand that when one is able to realize these events are true and view life events from a higher spiritual place, one is able to see things in longer-term survival concepts, which assist greatly in decision-making and prioritizing. Seeing these types of stories become more and more common tells me that the overall consciousness of mankind as a whole is increasing, and that indeed is real good news, one word. Now it's my turn. If these stories are occurring today, they were occurring 100 years ago, 500 years ago, and 1,000 years ago. For some reason we forget our past life. There is an explanation in a book called Alien Interview. It's about the Roswell crash of 1947, in which the alien communicated telepathically with Matilda O'Donnell McElroy and told us that when we die we are shocked. Billions of volts of electricity in order to make us forget our past life, and that our soul never dies and we're born again and again. And the reason we are shocked with this electricity, high voltage, is because the Earth is a prison planet. Ooh. And if you want to know more, I read the whole book on this channel. Just type in Alien Interview or go to the playlists for this channel. There are at least 30 videos in that playlist. Start at the beginning so you understand what's going on. I have a lot of people who send comments, and obviously they did not watch previous videos so they would understand what's going on. You can't just plunge into chapter 6 and understand everything in chapters 1 through 5. There are also letters written by Matilda O'Donnell McElroy to the author. He is an author, but he's not the author of this book. He's the editor and publisher, Lawrence R. Spencer. He's from Sacramento, California. Matilda sent him all the papers she had in her possession, probably by oversight. I'm sure the military did not want her to hold top-secret documents for 60 years, but before she died, she decided the people should know the truth, and she released them to Lawrence R. Spencer. And she told him to make up a science fiction book, because he is a science fiction writer. He wrote The Oz Factor. And he read the top secret documents and decided this should not be fiction. This is the truth. It should be published as the truth. And he published it without alteration, which was a huge gift to us. And he took a huge risk on his own life doing that. And so after he did that, he burned the original documents so that he was not in possession of them. He's still around, and a lot of others aren't. When you have secrets, your life is in danger. We go through times periodically where the people rise up against their despotic rulers, and in the French Revolution they cut off their heads. They cut a lot of heads off. It got crazy. It got to the point if you said anything about those who were cutting off heads, they cut your head off. And so we went from one insane ruler to another insane ruler. And then who took over? Napoleon, who was another insane ruler. Violence leads to violence, which leads to violence, which leads to more violence. Learn it. Violence is not the answer. I want to pack up all these people who are parasites. I want to put them on a large spaceship. Maybe we could get some help from some aliens. And I want to send them to a distant planet where they can all live with their own kind. I'm not particular which planet. It does not have to have water, an atmosphere to breathe. I couldn't care less what happens to these useless eaters. They have the nerve to call us useless eaters, and they themselves are useless eaters. And if you murder them, they'll come back, as this little boy did. We want them to live somewhere else. We want them to stay in their old bodies as long as possible, to keep them out of trouble. And if they're all together, they will know what it's like to live among their own kind. Maybe they will learn something, and when they come back, maybe they will have a little compassion for others. That's the end of this video.
This is why I'd rather do it by myself. Stack money, make music, put my product on the shelf. So many haters, man, it's hard.